Senate may also consider a deficit reduction plan offered by Democratic leader Harry Reid, raising the debt ceiling through the elections in 2012, and it reportedly cuts the deficit by nearly $3 trillion over 10 years. It doesn't include tax or revenue increases. And now to live coverage of the U.S. Senate.
Eternal Spirit, your goodness endures continually. Save us by your name and vindicate us by your strength. Bend your ears to the words of our prayer and do not hide from our supplication. As our lawmakers face difficulties that test their powers to the limit, shield them from cynicism and faint-heartedness. May they not become weary in doing your will, knowing that they will reap your bountiful harvest if they faint not. Lord, as our nation faces the potentially catastrophic, inspire our lawmakers to seek your counsel, which will stand forever. Illumine their pathway that they may not fail. We pray in your merciful name. Amen.
Please join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Clerk will read a communication to the Senate.
Washington, D.C., July 27, 2011. To the Senate, under the provisions of Rule 1, Paragraph 3 of the Standing Rules of the Senate, I hereby appoint the Honorable Kirsten E. Gillibrand, a senator from the state of New York, to perform the duties of the chair. Signed, Daniel K. Inouye, President pro tempore.
Madam President.
Majority Leader.
Following leader remarks, the Senate will be in a period of morning business for 1 hour. The Republicans control the first half. The majority controls the final half. I'm told there's a bill S-1420 due for a second reading.
Clerk will read the title of the bill for the second time.
S-1420, a bill to require that the United States government prioritize all obligations on the debt held by the public, Social Security benefits, and military pay in the event that the debt limit is reached and for other purposes.
Madam President, I would object any further proceedings with respect to this legislation at this time.
Objection is heard.
Madam President, today our Republican colleagues in the House planned to vote on a bill to lift the debt ceiling for a few months before plunging this nation and its economy back into a state of uncertainty. What I mean by that is under their legislation, which would extend the debt ceiling for just a few months, the latest report, because the numbers that they have come up with are all wrong, we would come back in September, if in fact we ever left here, and we would be debating the debt ceiling all over again. What a way to proceed. It's just unbelievable they would come up with such a program. Last night, Speaker Boehner pushed back that vote because his legislation didn't have the support of Republicans in his own chamber. Group after group, from the Republican Study Committee to the Club for Growth and many other organizations, have said they simply don't like his legislation. But pushing back the vote by a day or rewriting parts of the bill won't solve the underlying problem. A short-term solution is not an adequate solution for our economy. Our country, our economy, and the world demands more. Why do I say the world? Because our economy is the most robust, strongest economy in the world, the history of the world. And for us to fail to pay our debt would throw the world economy into a tailspin. Even if the Speaker could get his legislation to the House of Representatives, I can assure everyone, Madam President, that it wouldn't pass the Senate. And certainly, if by some strange phenomenon it passed, the President wouldn't sign it. We don't have to worry about that. There'll be no veto. This legislation is so weak that it won't get out of this chamber. Rather than lifting what economists call the fog of default, this Republican plan would usher in an era of bad economic weather that could last for years. A few weeks ago, Speaker Boehner said it was a terrible idea to merely postpone a default on the national debt or to push the problem down the road for a few weeks or a few months. That's what he said. Back then, he was not interested in a short-term solution. Back then, he was right. This is why. Economists, market analysts, and rating agencies said the world economy simply cannot bear this kind of uncertainty any longer. They've said a short-term solution to the impending default would still result in the loss of our AAA rating that has kept interest rates low in this country and saved consumers money for more than 70 years. So, Madam President, I trust that Speaker Boehner and other reasonable Republicans understand the seriousness of a default crisis. Here's what the Speaker said very, very recently. Quote, "That would be a financial disaster not only for our country but for the worldwide economy. You can't create jobs if you default on the federal debt." End of quote. But a short-term fix doesn't get the job done. It would cause many of the same calamitous results as a technical default, including rising interest rates that would essentially raise every person's taxes in our country. American families would pay more for their mortgages, car loans, student loans, credit card bills, and everything else. And higher interest rates wouldn't just be costly for consumers. It would also cost the federal government more and would actually increase our deficits and debt, and very quickly. A less than 1% increase in interest rates, which economists have predicted that the United States debt is downgraded, would cost our government more than $100 billion every year. I repeat, Madam President, it would cost our government $100 billion extra every single year. In a decade that would cost this country as much taxpayer money as Speaker Boehner's proposal would cut from the deficit. In effect, his short-term plan would yield not a single dime of saving. Nothing. Republicans would like the American public to believe Democrats in Congress and the White House are insisting on a long-term deal for political reasons. They say Democrats just want to push this off until after the presidential election. It's not true. It's not Democrats who have asked for a long-term solution. It's the economy. The economy has demanded it. If Republicans in Congress are willing to risk our economy by playing politics in July, why wouldn't they do the same in September, October, November, when his proposal, Speaker Boehner's proposal, would run out of money? That's why every economist, every market analyst, every rating agency has insisted any legislation to avert a default on the nation's debt must take us through the end of 2012. The Senate's considering a measure that would avert default and cut $2.7 trillion from the deficit. It's a reasonable measure, and Republicans have supported every one of its cuts in the past and should be able to pass both House and Congress with bipartisan support. I've heard a number of my friends on the other side of the aisle come here and say, but they're talking about overseas contingency fund. The Congressional Budget Office, the nonpartisan watchdog of Congress, has decided that that is worth $1 trillion, just what we put in our bill. The Office of Management Budget said it's worth $1 trillion. It gives the legislation that we're projecting, gives each side something it wants. It protects Social Security and Medicare without raising a single penny of revenue. And most importantly, it's a long-term strategy to safeguard the economy and give the markets the stability they need. Unlike Speaker Boehner's legislation, which economists have rejected, it would not put us through all this again in a few months, probably only a few weeks, and with even less certainty of achieving compromise than now. British Prime Minister David Lloyd once said, quote, "There's nothing more dangerous than to leap a chasm in 2 jumps." And that's really true. Congress has a duty to do what it takes to avert a national default in one swift leap. It will take political courage. I urge all my friends, Democrats and Republicans, to join hands. We can take courage from one another and make that leap together. Because if we don't clear this chasm, our nation's economy will go over the edge with us. Madam President, I would note the absence of quorum.
Go call the roll.
Mr. Akaka.
Request the quorum call be dispensed with.
Without objection.
Yesterday afternoon, the White House issued a statement of administration policy which said that when the legislation Speaker Boehner is now revising reaches the President's desk, unnamed senior advisors will recommend that the President veto it. Now, I have a question for those senior advisors. What about this legislation is so offensive that you'd rather see the nation default on its obligations than have the President sign it into law? From what I can tell, the only thing in this bill the President hadn't already expressed his support for, either publicly or privately, is that it doesn't get him through his election without having to engage in another national discussion about the debt crisis that's brought us to this point. So I would ask these senior advisors whether that's a position they want to put the President in. Do they really intend to suggest that he veto the nation into default for political reasons? That's how I read the threat, and I think that's how the rest of the country would read it as well. So this morning I'd like to reiterate my very strong support for Speaker Boehner, the House Republican leadership, and this plan to prevent default and reduce Washington spending. I also want to commend the Speaker for his efforts and for his determination. This hasn't been an easy process, but I hope through it all the nation sees how hard the Speaker has worked to ensure our nation avoids calamity while safeguarding the American dream. The nation's had a chance to see the Speaker at his best over the past few days. Unlike the President, he not only put forward actual legislation to prevent this crisis, he's keeping his promise to cut spending more than any increase in the debt limit with no tax hikes. And what about the President's plan? Well, when asked the President's plan, his aides point to a speech and a veto threat. Madam President, with all due respect, Congress can't vote on a speech, and a veto threat won't prevent default. The fact is, Republicans have offered the only proposal at this point that attempts to get at the root of the problem and which actually has a chance of getting to the President's desk. That's why we'll continue to press for the legislation Speaker Boehner has proposed. And that's why we'll fight against anything that pretends to solve the problem but really doesn't, including the bill from Senate Democrats that proposes the largest debt limit increase in history while falling $500 billion short on the cuts it claims to provide. Now, Madam President, this crisis our nation faces at this moment has a very simple cause, easily understood. Washington spends a lot more money every year than it takes in. Do that every year, and the debt piles up. And now we've reached the point where our deficits and debts are so large they're suffocating job growth, threatening the wider economy, and imperiling entitlements. It took more than 2 centuries for Washington to amass a debt of $10.6 trillion. But just 2.5 years after President Obama swore the oath of office, it's higher than that by more than a third. And based on the President's actual policies, the situation is expected to get much worse. In just 5 years' time, under President Obama's budget plan, the federal government will spend almost as much money just to cover the interest on its debts as it will on national defense. And over the next 10 years, the President's policies will add more than $9 trillion to the debt. This is why S&P revised its long-term credit outlook for the U.S., not because we haven't authorized the President to spend more money, but because he's asking for too much of it. And yet, incredibly, the President's budgets would do nothing to reverse this trend. So he can claim to be interested in a solution, but what he's actually put on paper makes the problem worse. Right now, the President is asking Congress to raise the debt ceiling by more than it's ever been raised before in our history, even as the nation is teetering on the edge of a crisis caused by that very debt. Let me repeat, our nation is facing a crisis because of the size of our debt. And the President of the United States, the man that Americans elect to be the steward of our economy, is threatening to veto any bill that doesn't add more than $2 trillion to the debt ceiling, the largest increase in history. The President's not taking a stand on cuts. He's not taking a stand on reform to entitlements. He's not insisting on reforms. Forget all of that. What he wants more than anything else is more room under the debt ceiling to get him through the election. He said that is his bottom line. So I remain as committed as ever to resolving this crisis in a way that will allow us to avoid default without raising taxes and to cut spending without budget gimmicks. There's only one option that does that, and that's the one Speaker Boehner has proposed and that is being improved as we speak. Madam President, I yield the floor.
Order. The leadership time is reserved under the previous order. The Senate will be in a period of morning business for 1 hour, with senators permitted to speak therein for up to 10 minutes each, with the time equally divided and controlled between the 2 leaders or their designees, with the Republicans controlling the first half and the majority controlling the second half.
Madam President.
Senator from South Dakota.
Madam President, yesterday I came down to the floor to talk about where we've been, where we are, and where we're going, and to discuss how we're going to get out of this mess. And I pointed out the President's disappointing record when it comes to these debt issues. The President originally requested a clean debt ceiling increase that didn't have any spending reductions attached to it. He then submitted a budget that failed to ever balance, and this budget didn't include the recommendations from the Simpson-Bowles Commission that he had appointed to come up with some suggestions about how to put our country on a more sustainable fiscal path. According to the Congressional Budget Office, his budget didn't even meet his metric of primary balance, which is balancing the budget not including interest costs. Well, after realizing that House Republicans were the only ones with a plan to balance our budget and pay down the debt, President Obama decided to give a speech. Of course, it was just a speech. It did not include numbers. He didn't resubmit his budget to Congress despite requests to do so. He just gave a speech. And as they say, Madam President, talk is cheap. We need action. The only action he's promised, though, is that he will veto plans that would do something to address our debt and deficit problem. Earlier this month, the administration issued a veto threat for the Cut, Cap, and Balance bill. This was a reasonable proposal that immediately cut spending, put a cap on spending, and would have raised the debt limit after a balanced budget amendment was approved by the Congress. In fact, this was so reasonable that according to a CNN poll, 66% of the people in this country supported this plan. This bill garnered the support of 234 members of the House of Representatives, including 5 Democrats. But Senate Democrats voted to table the bill after this veto threat was issued by the President. So Speaker Boehner in the House of Representatives unveiled yet another plan. It certainly isn't perfect, but it begins to deal with our spending problem while also increasing the debt limit to provide a period of time for Congress to pass more substantial budget savings. Unfortunately, the administration issued a veto threat for this bill. Their reasoning? It doesn't extend the debt limit past the election. Now, it doesn't take a genius to figure out why. It's not because the markets require a longer-term increase. They don't. It's not because Congress generally approves long-term increases in the debt limit. We don't. It's not because a long-term increase would force us to cut more spending. It wouldn't. It's because the President has to face re-election next year. That's it. Nothing more, nothing less. It's a political consideration, not an economic one. So after months of fear-mongering about the risk of not raising our debt limit, the President would actually veto a bill because it casts him in a bad political light. Madam President, this is unacceptable. Tomorrow, I am hopeful that the House of Representatives will pass the Boehner bill, and I'm hopeful that as soon as we receive it here in the United States Senate, we'll take it up, pass it, and send it to the President for his signature. We need to do it not just for the debt limit increase, which we do, but we also need to do it to start cutting spending and creating a process to reform entitlement programs. Already our economy is feeling the impact of these debts and deficits. We know from the Reinhardt and Rogoff study that our economy is already growing at 1 percentage point less than it should be because of our debt. This is costing us about 1 million jobs every single year. And if we don't take action to cut spending, we know what our future holds. Downgrades, interest rate increases, austerity programs filled with tax hikes and draconian spending cuts, and anemic economic growth. Looking at Europe right now, Ireland pays 12.9% interest on 3-year bonds. Portugal pays 19.4%, and Greece pays an astounding 28.9%. These rates would truly bankrupt our country in short order. Unfortunately, as former Bush economic advisor and Federal Reserve Board Governor's member Larry Lindsey pointed out in a Wall Street Journal op-ed recently, and then again reiterated yesterday at a Finance Committee hearing, even a normalization of interest rates in the United States to their historical average for the past 20 years would add $4.9 trillion to our projected debt over the next 10 years. Madam President, we can't afford the spending that we have now, let alone this additional interest. We need to start cutting spending now. Both the Cut, Cap, and Balance plan and the Boehner plan would do this. We also need to create a process to reform entitlements. The Cut, Cap, and Balance Plan does this by capping spending, and the Boehner Plan does this through a new joint committee that has a firm deadline for congressional action yet this year. I wish I could say, Madam President, there was a plan by the President that does this. There isn't. And that's why we here in the United States Senate and the House of Representatives are going to have to take the leadership in this debate. The President obviously has decided that this is more about politics and unfortunately has not stepped up and provided the leadership that's necessary to get our country back on a sustainable fiscal path. And as a consequence, we are where we are, facing a few days from now a deadline where we will have to increase the borrowing authority of this country. And what I would submit to my colleagues, Madam President, is that the issue and the challenge and the problem in front of us is not the debt limit, it is the debt. If we don't do something about this debt, we are going to bankrupt this country. We are going to see the kinds of interest rates that they're seeing in Europe. We're going to see anemic economic growth in this country, and it's going to be very, very difficult to get people back to work. So cutting spending, getting our fiscal house in order, making government smaller, not larger, making the government economy smaller and the private economy larger is the way that we need to get this country back on track. But it starts by having a plan that puts our fiscal house in order. And so we, in the next few days, are going to have a chance to vote yet again on a plan put forward by the House of Representatives because the President has failed to put forward a plan. And I hope, Madam President, that our colleagues here in the United States Senate will do the right thing for this country and start to get us on that pathway that will enable us to get past the short-term challenges that we face, get us to an opportunity to vote on a balanced budget amendment, which I think is desperately needed in this country, that would put the kind of fiscal discipline in place for the long term so that we aren't having these year-over-year $1.5 trillion deficits that continue to accumulate more and more debt and put this country at greater risk and the future generations in greater jeopardy. So I would hope that my colleagues will support a responsible plan that actually does cut spending, actually does address the issue of entitlement reform, does it without raising taxes, and make sure that come next Tuesday we've taken the action that's necessary to protect our economy, shield it from any adverse impacts that could occur as a result of us not raising our debt limit, but do it in a way that addresses the fundamental issue here, which is not the debt limit, but the debt. Madam President, I yield the floor.
Madam President.
Senator from Georgia.
Madam President, I associate myself with the remarks of the Senator from South Dakota. Before coming to the floor this morning, I returned 2 phone calls that I got yesterday out of 2,000 phone calls that came in the office. I picked those 2 because they were both people that I have known for a long time but haven't talked to in a long time and have never called me in my capacity as a senator. Both of them are business people. Both of them are neighbors. And both of them had the same message. The uncertainty that Congress and this administration are now causing in terms of our inability to meet the day of reckoning next Tuesday, when we must do something, is beginning to impact their business, their philosophy, their investment, and their country. What we are doing as we dilly-dally around almost, putting off a final decision, not agreeing to not agree on anything, is we're making things worse. And I think the reports in a couple months that will show economic activity in July will show you America slowing down, economic activity slowing down. And it's because Congress and this President cannot get their act together. Now, history and facts are stubborn things. And I want to go over a 2-year history of this debt ceiling crisis because for 2 years we've known it was coming. For 2 years we have talked about it. In fact, a little over 18 months ago on the floor of this Senate, Republicans and Democrats passed a deficit commission amendment which made it successfully through Congress, was signed by the President, and that deficit commission was created. It was charged with coming up with a solution for our rising spending problems, reduction of our deficit and our debt over time, better management of our fiscal policy, and getting Congress's act together where it could vote up or down on a proposal. That became known as the Simpson-Bowles proposal. It cut $4 trillion in spending over a decade. It reformed our tax policy. It weeded out a lot of bad things that have been sitting there for a long time that we haven't done. What happened when it came out in December? The President rejected it out of hand. Now, I'm not being partisan here because a bipartisan group of people offered that amendment. I was one of the 5 Republicans that voted for it on the floor. I thought it was a conscientious way to begin to address the debt and the deficit and the problem that we face. For some reason, unbeknownst to me, in December of last year, the President of the United States rejected it out of hand. All he had to do was send it to the Senate for an up or down vote like the amendment called for, and we'd at least begun the process of dealing with our debt and our deficit. Instead, he rejected it out of hand. In the months preceding this debate today and preceding this coming Tuesday when we do run up against the debt ceiling, we've had other things come to the floor of the Senate or the House that have been rejected out of hand. The cut, cap, and balance legislation, which I voted for last week, was a conscientious, or I voted to not table it. The leader decided to table it and not even discuss it, was a conscientious way to deal with our debt and deficit over time. It was a disciplined process that said, look, we need to make cuts now and begin the process, $51 billion. We need to cap our spending in the future based on historical spending averages. And we ought to give the American people a chance to say, does America need a balanced budget or not? But instead of dealing with that legislation, the Senate tabled it. So once again, when we had a chance to say, just say yes to solving our problem, we just said no. Last night, Speaker Boehner's bill, which was to be voted on today, was pulled off because of a revenue estimate that was produced by CBO. I hope that will get worked out, and I hope that will pass the House and it will come back to the Senate. And it's about time for us to say, just say yes to something instead of just saying no. And I want to talk about the consequences of just saying no for a second. The longer we say no, the longer we send uncertainty to the world markets and to our own markets, the worse our problem is going to be. Our tax system is based on Americans being prosperous. As America prospers, as we have better economic activity, our revenues go up, not because we raise taxes, but because we raised expectations. We are now lowering expectations in America. The 2 business people I talked to this morning said they don't know what to do. And quite frankly, Madam President, I didn't know what to advise them. I ran a company for 22 years, and I know the worst thing about running a business is to have uncertainty in terms of which way you're going. So it's my sincere hope that everybody will come together and realize no is not an option. We need to say yes. If the President has a plan, bring it. If the House passes their plan, let us vote for it on the floor. But let's move forward because the price and the cost of uncertainty is destroying what little economic vibrance the United States of America has today. Let's raise the expectations of our people. Let's raise the productivity of the United States Senate and the United States Congress and this President of the United States. Let's sit down at the bigger table of common sense. Let's find a solution, and let's find it now. Madam President, I yield the floor.
Majority Leader.
With the Republican leader, I now ask unanimous consent the period of morning business be extended until 2 p.m. today. During that period of time, senators be allowed to speak for up to 10 minutes.
Without objection. Wyoming.
Madam President, I come to the floor today, having been listening to my colleagues, and we see the recent job data, and it shows the effects of our struggling economy. Unemployment is going up, wages are going down, concerns all around the country about jobs, the economy, the debt, the spending. And I have to tell you, I certainly believe, as somebody who's practiced medicine for 25 years in Wyoming, taking care of families all around the cowboy state, and been very involved in the debate over the health care law, that the President's health care law makes matters worse. Absolutely makes matters worse. Worse by forcing employers to either offer government-approved health insurance or to pay higher expenses. You know, each day it becomes obvious to me, Madam President, that the new health care law is designed to ultimately end employer-provided coverage altogether, and also to encourage Americans to join government-run exchanges. And that's why, as a doctor, I come to the floor week after week with a doctor's second opinion about the health care law. Because under this law, businesses are permitted to drop out of paying for employer-provided coverage as long as they pay a fine. And the fine is about $2,000 per employee. Now, this number is far smaller than what it would actually cost the business to provide family health benefits to each of their employees. So what happens with small businesses in this country? Well, they are going to face an ever clearer incentive to drop coverage for the people that they employ.
Now, they're not required to pay this fine for the first 50 workers who lose coverage. And then the question is, where are these people supposed to go? Where do they go for their insurance? How does it work? The President promised them if they like what they have, they can keep it. Yet the incentives built into the health care law seem to be encouraging employers to drop their employees. So where do they go? Well, the new health care laws set up what are called exchanges, health care exchanges for these people to enter. Whether they want to or not, they're going to be forced to go that way. These exchanges are shorthand for insurance markets where as much as 80% of the cost of the family's insurance could be actually borne by taxpayers. Under these circumstances, the natural response is for businesses to drop coverage for their employees altogether and then simply offer them, some less expensive cash benefits. Meanwhile, what happens to the employees who are going to lose the coverage that they may like and have to try to replace it? That's what's going to happen. They're going to have to try to replace it with a plan that Washington mandates. And that's a concern to a lot of Americans. This may be very bad news for the patient and is really bad news for taxpayers. Experts predict that the annual cost to provide government insurance subsidies could cost up to 9 times more than what the White House originally claimed. Now, if that isn't proof enough that the health care law is the wrong prescription to help America's job creators continue offering coverage to their workers, let's take a look at some of the things that have just come out in the last week. Just this past week, Monday, July 25th, National Federation of Independent Businesses, that's a group that represents small businesses all around the country, well, they released an astonishing new report. The NFIB has surveyed 750 small businesses. Now, these are small businesses, less than 50 employees. The survey asked these small businesses if they planned to drop health insurance coverage should their employees become eligible for this government subsidy to buy health insurance in the so-called exchange. Well, more than a quarter of the small businesses who offer coverage today, over a quarter of the small businesses that offer coverage today, said that they were very likely to drop coverage, very likely to drop coverage. Another 31% said they're somewhat likely to drop coverage. They need to look into it and find the specifics. But when you take a look and add the ones who are very likely and somewhat likely to drop coverage, you're looking at over half of the small businesses in this country considering dropping insurance coverage, effectively dumping their employees into the government-run exchange. Well, the small businesses group in the survey and the response from these small businesses, it prompted the Wall Street Journal to print an editorial highlighting this data, and it's titled "The Flight to the Exchanges." And, I read this and say, gee, I couldn't have said it better myself. The President's health care law wraps businesses in reams of bureaucratic red tape and uncertainty. And adding insult to injury, on Monday, July 11th of this year, the Department of Health and Human Services released yet another proposed regulation mandated by the health care law. The Obama administration issued it's called the Insurance Exchange Regulation. So what the rules do is they give the states the specific framework that they must use to set up a program or an exchange with this Washington-approved and mandated insurance. So here we go again. Another example of where this administration takes roughly 30 pages of the health care law and then turns it into 340 pages of bureaucratic Washington rules and regulations. Now, of course, the Secretary of Health and Human Services is trying to sell this new rule as offering competition and uses the word flexibility, but nothing could be further from the truth. How flexible can a 347-page Washington rule be when it's a rule that contains the word must 580 times? And it includes the word require 811 times. How flexible can that Washington rule actually be? Well, after examining all the rules, musts, and requires, one thing is very clear. This administration is paying lip service to state flexibility, while their policy is promoting a Washington-mandated, Washington-dictated, Washington-enforced approach. This regulation details a very complex and confusing process that states are going to have to follow. The states have to follow these confusing rules in an effort to prove to the Department of Health and Human Services that they meet its Washington mandates to set up and to run the insurance exchanges. And you know, they have very little time to do it. So this administration creates onerous new mandates, and then it fails to give states ample time to meet their overwhelming set of requirements. So let's put this into context for the states. Comments of the administration proposed rules are due this September, September 28th. Typically, it can take the Department of Health and Human Services 6 months to review those comments about the rules, and issue a final rule. That means it would likely see a final rule in March of 2012. Now remember, there are significant details missing from these exchange regulations. This regulation is only part of the details that states need to review before they can decide whether or not to run a health insurance exchange on their own, or let the federal government do it. So the administration still has yet to release rules explaining the health care law's essential health benefits package, the individual eligibility to participate in the exchanges, still waiting for the rules on quality standards for the exchanges, and waiting for a release of the rules explaining quality standards for the participating insurance plans. Those details may not come out until October or November of this year. This means that states still do not know what the minimum set of health service individuals and small businesses and insurances will have to offer in the exchange. Pending missing details and further rules expected to come from the administration this fall, final rules may be in place finally in May or June of 2012. States would then have to be prepared to submit their plan June of 2012 to Health and Human Services to be certified. So what happens if the rules aren't out by then? You know, many state legislatures end their sessions by June. So making it very difficult for them to comply with these tight timelines, it's almost impossible. Seems to me that this administration will have had 2 years to post their final regulations, while the states may have only 2 months to comply. What happens if a state isn't ready? Well, they say, have no fear, Washington is there to help. That's what they say. If the Department of Health and Human Services, they say that a state's insurance exchange, if it's not in compliance, then Washington will swoop in and set up its own program. This is often called the federal fallback or the federally facilitated exchange. Big fancy words for Washington bureaucrats telling states what they have to do. The irony of all of this, Madam President, is that the administration's rules offer very few details explaining what this federal fallback exchange will look like. So the states don't even know what happens if the federal fallback comes into place. Is the Department of Health and Human Services creating a stealth backdoor federal exchange? So if a state doesn't have adequate time to meet all of the operational program requirements and the burdensome review process, well, sounds like then the Obama administration will take control of the states. So why should a state like Utah, for example, that has created a specially designed insurance marketplace, be forced to comply with onerous and costly requirements of this rule? And if they're not willing to comply, they will face the consequences that Washington will make the final decisions. States should be encouraged to create innovative solutions that meet the unique needs of their constituents, not forced to follow a one-size-fits-all laundry list of Washington mandates. And that's why, Madam President, I return to the floor today as a physician who's practiced medicine for a long time, with a doctor's second opinion, to tell you that I believe this health care law is one that is bad for patients, it's bad for providers, the nurses and the doctors who take care of those patients, and it's bad for taxpayers. And that's why I believe it's important that we repeal and replace this health care law. Thank you very much, Madam President. I yield the floor.
Madam President.
Senator from Maryland.
Good morning, Madam President. I wish to speak in morning business. How much time have I been allowed?
10 minutes.
I thank the presiding officer. Madam President, I come to the floor today with a great sense of urgency. We are less than 1 week away from reaching our debt limit. If we fail and we falter, the United States of America will be irrevocably fractured. We aren't at an impasse. We're at the edge of a cliff. Unless Congress acts, we're going to go over it. And what will be the consequences of it? If we do not meet our obligations to pay our debts, it will result in a default, and default will result in enormous increase in interest rates. For all of America that's so worried about tax increases, I got to send a real red alert when interest rates go sky high. Because of our failure to act, it will be the biggest tax on America that we could have. And it'll be a tax at the kitchen table. It means if you have a variable rate mortgage, it will skyrocket. If you have a student loan, that interest is going to increase. And if you have a car loan, forget it. The payments are going to be enormous. So we need to face what this means. Raising the debt limit, we need to prevent the default so that our bond rating is not lowered. Now, I've never been big on talking about bond ratings, but this is really a crucial one. We now have a AAA bond rating. So what does that mean? It means when they buy our Treasury bills or other government-secured benefits, but particularly our T-bills, it is as good as gold. Well, now, if we're downgraded, we could just be a tin horn, tin cup nation. This is not the United States of America. This is not what people fought and died for. When people say they represent a party that wants to defend the Constitution, we all have to defend the Constitution. And right now, defending the Constitution and defending America is to lift our debt ceiling and get work to the hard work of, number one, dealing with our debt, but also dealing with another issue of job growth. So we've got to get to work. Instead, we are busy at work playing the blame game. Squabble is not a solution. But I believe we Democrats do have a solution. And I think the solution does lie in the Reid proposal. The Reid proposal, before that the senator from Nevada, the majority leader, has offered, is substantive, it's real, and it's achievable. Madam President, I was on TV yesterday, and they said, oh, you're a liberal Democrat. Well, I don't know if I'm a liberal, I don't know if I'm a conservative, but I'll tell you what I am. I'm a diner Democrat. I think about the people. I think about the ordinary people, and I think about their day-to-day needs. And when people talk about what kind of solutions they mean, and they want everything on the table, what I want on the table is the things that affect the kitchen table. And that's why I support the Reid proposal. It is an achievable framework for avoiding default now and downgrade of our bond rating now. What does it do? It has three important elements. One, timing, to take us through 2012. It's not about the next election. It's showing that we are serious and we're substantive. Second, it has really important content where we really do cut federal spending, and it's observable, and it's quantifiable, and it's verifiable. And number three, it gives us a path forward to deal with the important issues of entitlement and revenue reform. Wow. So why can't they take it? I am really puzzled about why they can't take it. It's 2012. Okay, who knows who's going to be in control of either the White House or the Congress then? So, but it can't be about us. It's not about me. It's about we the people. Second, let's go to the content. There are substantial cuts there in discretionary spending, defense spending that does not affect readiness or military health care, and it got rid of earmarks. We got rid of earmarks a long time ago. And there were actually cuts that the House voted for in the Ryan budget. So a few weeks ago, they said yes to the cuts, but when we say yes to the cuts, they say no to the proposal. I don't get it. But most of all, it's not whether I get it. It's that we have to make sure that we get a solution. What I think is important about the Reid proposal is it's $2.7 trillion in cuts. Now, I understand CBO has scored it, and they say it's 2.2. Well, 2.2, 2.7, that's real money. That is real money. And it shows that we're serious. It also provides this important path forward called a joint committee. Now, it is not a commission where it's going to be outsiders who are experts from think tank environments and hoo-ha, hoo-ha. What it is members of Congress, both sides of the aisle, both sides of the dome. Let's get it together with them, and then let's have this committee where we then move forward on the reform of revenue as well as looking at looking at entitlement reform. I want to be clear that if in fact the horror of all horrors become when we fracture the standing of the United States of America, not only in the financial markets, but in the standing of the world, it will have very serious consequences. First of all, to benefits. The president is going to have to pay the bills based on whatever money's coming in. He won't be able to borrow. America won't be able to borrow. So our T-bill will not have the same value that it once did. He's going to have to pay our bills. So what are the benefits? Well, one is paychecks. The first paycheck that he's going to meet is the paycheck to our troops. He's got to make sure that if they're fighting to defend America while we're squabbling around and screwing around, we're going to pay our troops. My God, did it ever occur to anyone that our troops wouldn't get paid? Yeah, it's going to be tight. So we pay the troops. We're going to certainly pay our veterans benefits. They might not be in the same amount the first month, but we'll kind of squeak through. It will be Social Security. Well, maybe the checks will go out, but maybe it'll only be in half the amount. But the Social Security offices will be closed. So benefits will have a direct impact. Where is he going to slow down the trickle of money? To state and local governments. So what does that mean? Community development block grant money, education, and so on. That's going to really cause enormous layoffs at the state and local level of public employees, but also the contractors, that asphalt contractor, that person who handles the office machinery and so on. All that small business they love to romanticize over. Minority contractors. We're going to have a big impact. And then it takes us to the government will definitely slow down or not pay at all contractors, whether it's the big defense guys that employ thousands and thousands of people, or is it not going to pay the small to medium-sized business, like in my own state, that does information technology. Now, we are about to destroy the reputation and solvency of the United States of America. We are about to destroy the reputation and solvency of the United States of America, not only for one day, but for a decade and maybe the rest of the century. And this is not being done by an outside power. We're spending $700 billion on defense, and we're destroying ourselves by a self-inflicted wound because of political dysfunction, political rigidity, and political ideology. What the heck is this? And I could even use more intense language. Look to what we are about to do. We cannot allow this to happen. So I say to my colleagues, look, one of my colleagues said to me yesterday, Senator Mikulski, what would it take to get you to the table? I said, give me a plan and 30 Republican names behind it. I'll see if I can support the plan and get 30 others. So, Madam President, I know my time's up, but I don't want the time to be up on America. Let's come together. Let's stop being Democrats. Let's stop being Republicans. Let's really say, call us what we should be called, an American. And what do Americans do? When the times get the times are tough, the tough get going. Let's get going. Let's make the tough decisions. Let's put politics aside, put America number one, and get us back on track. Madam President, I yield the floor.
Madam President.
Senator from New York.
First, I want to thank my good friend and colleague from Maryland for her great words. She comes from the heart of Maryland and the heart of America. Very few people I have met in politics in my many years in this endeavor have an understanding of how average people feel and think and tick than the great senator from the state of Maryland, and I want to thank her for her outstanding remarks. If this body on both sides of the aisle would listen to her and her common sense intelligence, we'd be in a lot better shape than we are now. So I thank my colleague from the great state of Maryland, the senior senator. Now, Madam President, I rise today to discuss the deadlock we've reached in the debate over raising the nation's debt ceiling. 2 nights ago, the President spoke and put the current stalemate in the context it belongs, the result of a small bloc within the House Republicans that refuses to compromise even 1 inch. It is on their shoulders. We have perhaps 100 Republicans at the extreme right who seem to be leading the Congress, the nation, over a cliff. They don't even care about the idea that we might default. It's appalling. And yet, they seem to be calling the shots. For the last few weeks, the President has met over and over again with House Republicans, trying to meet them halfway, and in some instances, more than halfway. He's offered to cut record amounts from our debt and make cuts in programs that would be extremely painful to our side of the aisle. This minority in the House has come to think of compromise as a dirty word, and it appears as if they can't take yes for an answer. If you don't care about debt reduction, if you don't care about debt ceiling, rather, you can't get something done. Now, Speaker Boehner, who's a good and reasonable man, wants to do the right thing and compromise, but he's struggling to rein in his caucus. Instead of leading the House, Speaker Boehner is being led by a fringe in his caucus that thinks default is okay. This week, Speaker Boehner offered a 2-step plan that simply kicks the can down the road. It resolves the debt ceiling only for the next few months. And with the new CBO numbers, it will inevitably resolve it for even a shorter period of time. And that puts us within a few months right back here at square one, all over again, with the same anxiety, the same gridlock, the same problems we face today. What sense, in the good Lord's name, does that make? To just repeat this over and over and over again until we drive off the cliff. It makes no sense. Now, Madam President, all we have to do is just look at how difficult this crisis has been to resolve after a year of negotiations. Does anyone think it would be a good idea to do this all over again in less than 6 months? The Speaker's approach is not only wrong, it's dangerous. It would leave a cloud of default hanging over our heads for the next several months, undermining confidence in U.S. bonds. Market analysts have rejected the Speaker's approach, saying it could actually bring some of the same bad consequences as a default itself. It could even cause a credit rating downgrade. Just yesterday, the CEO of NASDAQ testified before the Judiciary Committee and said, quote, "The longer the deal, the better it is for the markets." Christian Cooper, a currency trader, was quoted by Bloomberg News this morning saying, quote, "From the market's point of view, a 2-stage plan is a non-starter because we know now it is amateur hour on Capitol Hill, and we don't want to be painted into this corner again. There's a significant risk of a downgrade with a deal that ties further cuts to another vote only a few months down the road," unquote. He said it better than any of us could say it. And he's a currency trader. And Mohamed El-Arian, the CEO of PIMCO, one of the most respected investors in the markets, and he invests, as I understand it, hundreds of billions of dollars. Well, Mr. El-Arian expressed concern the other night that, quote, the political ground is being prepared for a short-term stopgap compromise, and he warned that this could push stocks down and leave the U.S. debt rating, quote, extremely exposed to a damaging downgrade. Let me again quote Mr. El-Arian, one of the great experts on our credit markets, that what he said is that the kind of plan that came over from the House that is attempting to be debated in the House, I don't even think it'll make it over, but that the kind of plan being debated in the House would, quote, create an extremely exposed, damaging downgrade to our credit, to our nation's debt rating. Even Republicans rejected a short-term increase in the debt ceiling as recently as last month. Dave Camp, Republican chairman of Ways and Means, said, it doesn't give you certainty. Ideally, you'd like to get that settled and not have to continually have it a continually hanging over issue. That's the Republican head of the Ways and Means Committee. House Majority Leader Eric Cantor said, quote, if we can't make the tough decisions now, why would we be making those tough decisions later? I don't see how multiple votes on a debt ceiling increase can help get us to where we want to go. It's my preference we do this thing one time. Putting off tough decisions is not what people want in this town, unquote. That's from Majority Leader Cantor, and yet he's leading the charge to send over the very plan, the very type of plan he's criticized only a few weeks ago. Republicans have apparently flip-flopped on this point. They're now saying they want the same kind of debt ceiling, short-term debt ceiling increase that they opposed on substantive grounds previously. So Republicans have flip-flopped on this point. But make no mistake about it, a short-term deal is still a non-starter in the Senate and nothing more than a glide path to a credit downgrade, and we will not allow it. While Republicans continue pushing for an unproductive plan, Senator Reid's plan, the Senate plan, offers real potential to finally break this impasse. It makes difficult choices. It includes almost $1 trillion in domestic discretionary program cuts, including defense. This is serious belt-tightening that will have consequences, good consequences, for years to come. And the plan received a major boost this morning when Congress's official scorekeeper confirmed that the first draft cuts more, a lot more, than the Boehner plan. According to the Congressional Budget Office, the Senate draft bill achieves almost $1.3 trillion more in deficit reduction than the Boehner plan. Let me repeat that. According to CBO, the Senate draft bill achieves almost $1.3 trillion more in deficit reduction than the Boehner plan. The report also affirms that the Senate plan's $1 trillion in savings from the Iraq and Afghanistan wars are real. That's CBO saying it, not some Democrat who's hoping and praying for an easy fix. This completely undercuts the arguments by Republicans who have tried to call these savings a gimmick, even though they included them in their own budget and voted for them only a few months ago. If it was okay in their budget, it's got to be okay in our budget. You can't just change your mind based on whose budget it is. The substance should matter to some extent. Plus, since the CBO only measured the plan's first draft, before additional plan savings were incorporated into the bill, the final version of the Senate plan will achieve even deeper savings when it is filed on the floor. As Politico reports this morning, quote, in the battle of budget scores, the Senate Democratic deficit reduction bill is the clear winner thus far over an alternative by Speaker John Boehner. And lastly, Senator Reid's proposal allows for a joint committee that has the potential to achieve even deeper savings down the road to get our country back on the path to economic growth. All in all, this is an offer that Republicans can't refuse. All of the cuts in Senator Reid's proposal have been supported at one point or another by the Republican side. And it meets the two main requirements laid out by the House Republicans. First, Speaker Boehner said the amount of the debt ceiling increase must be matched by the amount of spending cuts. Our proposal will do just that. Second, Speaker Boehner said that the tax increases must be off the table. Well, even though most of us would prefer tax increases, our proposal includes no revenue raisers whatsoever. We don't want tax increases on the middle class. We want tax increases on the wealthy and elimination of corporate loopholes. And to not have them is a hard decision for many on our side who know that we're going to need to do that for serious debt reduction. So, bottom line, in conclusion, we're getting dangerously close to August 2nd. Over and over, Democrats have shown a willingness to move in the direction of Republicans. It's time for Speaker Boehner to cut off his extreme Republicans that refuse to support even the plan that he crafted to meet their reckless demands. The Reid plan is our best route to a compromise. It's a compromise we need soon before the markets render a truly ominous judgment that will set our economy back for years. I yield the floor.